by living life God's way. Join me, Pastor Brian Callender, and a special guest each week as we discuss aspects of life and share nuggets with you so that you can be the best person God designed you to be. Join us every Thursday at 6 p.m. on social media as we share and challenge you to be the best that God will have you to be. Grab a friend, sit down and watch, and actively participate of what God will do as we share. God bless you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another session of Living Life God's Way. This evening is going to be another time where we share good, practical information. And we're definitely hoping that what we share this evening will be able to benefit you. I want to welcome Pastor Sophie with me, my co-host. Hopefully soon Dr. Ian will join us. I want to welcome her to the program. Pastor Sophie, welcome.
Thank you very much. And it is good to be here. I am excited about where this discussion is going to lead us. It's going to be enlightening, educational, informative, and very practical in helping us overcome abuse.
All right. Thank you very much. And our special guest this evening is Satya Calendar. Satya, did I pronounce that name right? I think you have your mic muted. So we wanna welcome you to our program this evening. Can you hear me? I think check your microphone to see if it's muted. And somehow I'm still not hearing you. We'll try it again. Okay, as she sort of what's going on there, we just want to welcome everyone to our program. We're excited. This evening we're going to talk about overcoming abuse. Sata, can you hear me now? All right, we seem to be having some technical issues there, but as soon as we get that sorted out, she'll be right back with us. But we're excited about sharing about this topic this evening because we know that this is something that goes on all over the world, all in different countries of the world, Pastor Sophie. We know that this is something that goes on, and the mission is I know we want people to be aware of this and come to a place where closure and solutions are brought about. Let's see if we get Satya here again. Satya, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All
Hello,
right.
everyone.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and thank you for agreeing to be on the program this evening to share your experience with us. We know that you have quite a bit of knowledge to share and experience, and also you're not only someone who's been through abuse, but you're also educated. You also encourage women. You are also an entrepreneur. You also a mom. You're also a nurse assistant. So you have quite a few things there under your belt, a wealth of experience and so on. So let me officially welcome you to our program. So Satya, welcome to our program this evening, Living Life God's Way.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. I'm going to ask the first question, and then I'll let Pastor Sophie jump in with the second one. So you would have gone through this situation, experience of abuse. Now I want to start right at the top, and my first question to you would be, how did you meet this person?
I was actually best friends with his cousin. I was 16 years old, living in Brooklyn, New York, and at the time he was incarcerated. So I was 16, he was 28. He happened to call her phone one day, and that's how we started talking.
Wow. Okay, Pastor Sophie.
As the relationship progressed, I'm going to just dive into it. As the relationship progressed, was there any signs that this gentleman would turn out to be abusive? Looking back.
So to answer that question, it has to go in two two different scenarios because, like I said, I was 16. He was going on 17. He was 28. I experienced it when he came home from incarceration, and it was physical. But it did start off with the controlling, part of the abuse, but then it became physical. I eventually got 2002. I allowed him back in my life. And when I allowed him back in my life, at first, everything seemed to be normal and I didn't see any signs of any kind of abuse or anything. But as time went by, he started verbally abusing me. He started emotionally abusing me, and he was controlling. And that was the beginning of it. And then gradually, it became physical.
Okay. Go ahead, Pastor Sophie.
Okay. Why the taking back in 2002?
I took him back because at the time I was really vulnerable. I was tired of dating different people. I was tired of being alone, and I felt like it was a convenient because I had already, been with him. So
Yes.
I figured, why not allow him back in my life? Why not give it another chance? And I was vulnerable, and I did just that. And that was the wrong decision.
I understand. Go ahead, Pastor Brian.
Yeah. Well, I'm here thinking all of these different thoughts are going on in my mind. Because I'm thinking, you have someone, you started a relationship, they come into your life, you are expecting to have, love, joy, peace, and so on, and looking forward to dating and stuff like that. But at that time, it obviously would have been an emotional roller coaster for you. So was he someone who started before the hitting got involved? He used to put you down a lot and stuff like that. That's some of the things that started to happen early.
Yes. So yes, that the verbal, the mental, and emotional was a part of beating down the self-esteem. So you experience name calling, you experience belittling. Um, he would use the fact that me and my mother didn't have a close relationship at that time. He would use that for his benefit. So he was always telling me that family didn't love me, family didn't care. He was the best thing for me. Nobody wanted me because I had children. And at that time, I had I had four and got pregnant with my youngest. So he would always use that against me, and say things like, nobody's gonna want you, you have four kids, but constantly causing separation with me and my family, and because I didn't have a perfect relationship with my mom, and because I loved him and thought he loved me, I believed it, and what it did was it caused separation with the family. So, um, yeah, my self-esteem was shattered. My self-esteem was definitely shattered. Um, from all the name calling, from all the badgering, the name calling, belittling, telling me what I can't, I won't do. I experienced financial as well. Every form of domestic abuse, I experienced it from him.
Wow.
Wow. So, coming out, just to get the timeline clear, you met him when you were 16 through a family friend, cousin, and then he was incarcerated. Was he incarcerated? He was incarcerated before you took him back in 2002.
No, he was home. He was home then. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the incarceration came after post 2002.
Right. It was before. So I met him while he was incarcerated. He came home. I experienced some of the abuse. He went back to jail, and then in the process of that, moved to North Carolina, and then he eventually came home.
Okay. Does he, looking back now in hindsight, would you say that he had some form of narcissistic behavior?
A little bit. He was abused as a child, and he
Right.
also went. And when knowing that, and then hearing a lot of stories and doing research, we've learned that a lot of abusers they either have gone through it or they've seen it themselves, and it causes them to become abusive, unfortunately. So yes, with him, he did have, some narcissistic behavior, and he saw it coming up, and not only did he see it, but he went through it.
Yeah.
Okay. So when hmm, as I think about this, and your experience, being a counselor and stuff like that, and seeing people being through similar, and to actually, because as you see, ladies and gentlemen, we bear the same last name. We're cousins.
Yes.
So all of that is going on in my mind while you speak. When you said you met him at 16 or so, right? 16
Yes.
plus going 17, and you were in a vulnerable state. What was his attitude to you at that time? Was he kind of like, I can take care of you, I got your back kind of stuff, or was he immediately aggressive towards you?
No, at the beginning he was, I kind of looked at him because, my dad was out of my life at the age of 8 years old because my mom had married my sister's dad who was in the Navy. So he relocated us to Florida, my stepdad. And so my dad had went on and started a new life. And so my stepdad was abusive. And so I witnessed it for 6 years, watching my mom go through abuse. And so when I met him, my youngest son's dad, I kind of looked at him honestly. It was more like a father figure, and the way he approached me was like, I can take care of you. I'll be there for you. I'll help you, that type of thing. And so I kind of gravitated to it because I was missing that piece of having my dad in my life. The only man that was in my life from age 8 to 14 was my sister's dad, and he was abusive.
Wow.
Wow.
So you would have seen it, and then you found yourself living the same thing that you grown up seeing. Well,
Yeah.
when the very first instant that you can remember, as you move from, you said 8 and on, the first time you experienced it, what do you remember what your first thoughts were?
The first time, from what I can remember, is a couple of incidents, but I recall me, my mom, and my stepdad was home, and at the time my sister wasn't born. Um, and I remember him sitting on the couch. He would always come home from work and sit on this recliner. And he came home, he got undressed or whatever. He sat on the recliner. My mom was in the kitchen cooking dinner, and he would always drink this bottle of gin. He always had a bottle of gin, and he was sitting on his recliner and watching wrestling, and he was drinking. He started drinking the bottle of gin, and I knew from experience that he was gonna fight my mom because every time he got drunk, that's what he did. And so shortly after, my mom's in the kitchen. She's doing what a wife and a mother's doing. She's preparing dinner. He starts arguing with her. Um, he then went into the bedroom and asked my mom to go in the bedroom, that he wanted to talk to her. And she went in the bedroom, and they supposedly had this conversation. And well, it started off as a conversation. And next thing you know, of course, the door was closed and it was locked. And the next thing you know, I hear my mom in there screaming. And I hear thumps, continuous thumps. And I proceeded to try to go and unlock the door, open the door, but it was locked. So here I am sitting here listening to my mom screaming and hollering from this man beating on her, and couldn't do anything because I felt like I couldn't do anything because the door was locked. And then if I called 911, I was afraid that he would do something to me. Because there was a situation where I did try to stop them, and he had been fighting my mom. She somehow was able to get out the room, and they were in the living room fighting. And I jumped in and tried to get this man off my mom, and I was thrown. And so, just going through that, it was like I had a fear at 8 years old. Like, what am I supposed to do? So I sat there with tears rolling down my face, hearing my mom go through this and knowing that as an 8-year-old child, what I couldn't do anything.
Wow. Sophie.
Wow. Wow.
It had gotten so bad that my grandparents were both in Brooklyn, New York, and they would send me back and forth from Florida to New York on a plane, Florida to New York, so I wouldn't have to continuously be exposed to the constant violence. I remember another time my mom ran out the house and ran to the place. She got in the car and drove with me to the payphone and called my grandmother on the phone and said, "Can y'all please get Safia?"
Wow.
Yeah.
So, based on what you're saying, this is something that you would have seen from the age of 8. So, when you're at 16, you said you're vulnerable, you're open, you're looking for that father figure, you're looking for safety and protection, and you thought you found it in this gentleman. When the first time that he was physically abusive to you, what were your thoughts?
I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was about maybe 3 months pregnant, and he had started doing drugs. I learned, I didn't know he was doing drugs before. I learned from his mom. Nobody ever told me the man was doing drugs. And my first experience witnessing him going crazy because he couldn't get the drugs or whatever is when I experienced the violent, the physical abuse. And I remember him dragging me. I was pregnant with my daughter, and I remember him dragging me on the floor because he needed money to get high and didn't have it. And so when it happened, the only thing I can think is, oh wow, oh my gosh. I started crying. I ended up running out the apartment, and his sister was outside, and she said, "Sappy was wrong." And I said, "Something is wrong with your brother. He just dragged me on the floor. He's going crazy." And she said, "You need to go tell my mom." And I said, "I don't know what to do. Like, I can't believe this." I was in shock, total disbelief. And I went and I told his mom, and she kept me, at her apartment with her. And that's when I learned, and she had a discussion with me, and that's when I learned that he was on drugs before.
Yeah. What after that incident, what made you stay with this gentleman? Because you would have seen mom go through that, and I know you said you were vulnerable, but that at this point now you're faced with the reality that he is abusive or he does drugs. What made the relationship continue?
For me, I think I stayed in it because at this point, like I said, I looked at him like he was my protector. He was my, I called myself loving him, although that wasn't love, but I called myself at the time loving him. And he really, like, I felt like that's all I had, because my mom wasn't there, my dad wasn't there, my grandparents were there, but I was so embarrassed and ashamed. And so I felt like he was the only one for me. And if I was to get out of the relationship, I would be lost. And so that caused me, to stay in a relationship that I had no business staying in. He became more of like literally like a father figure. It wasn't even a boyfriend. It was more like a father figure. He was controlling me, taking my money, doing all kind of the verbal, the mental and emotional was there. And I was young. And no matter how much people was telling me, I didn't tell too many people because I was embarrassed. And my friends that were my age, I wouldn't tell them anything like that because I was afraid that they would judge me or not be my friend anymore or something like that. So I kept it to myself.
So obviously, and what I'm hearing you saying is you're vulnerable, and that was taken advantage of. And you just said that you didn't want to tell your friends because you figured that they would judge you. But were you able to tell anybody at all while all of this was going on? Or first, let me ask how long this was going on for before you decided I had enough.
When I took him back, now the first time it didn't last long because he went to jail. But when I took him back in 2002, it lasted 9 years. My mom had an idea I was going through this. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. I can get my book.
As we continue with our program this evening, this is a real story. This is a practical story. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So when I took him back in 2002, my mom knew. She was always wanting to call the police, and I was always being defensive and telling her what was not happening. My uncle came from New York to North Carolina. He had an idea, but of course I covered it up. I was always saying, "Oh no, I'm fine. Nothing's going on. I'm okay." He's not. I was always being defensive.
Mm-hmm.
My coworkers had no idea. My friends had no idea, because I covered it up. So they had no idea. My sister knew, but she was young, so yeah.
Wow. I guess at this point, with not everyone knowing, just a limited few, you feel boxed in. This is your world. This is your sphere. This is where I now live in. Let Let me just transition to when you realized that you wanted to get out. When you said to yourself, I can't do this anymore.
It was 9 years later, so it was 2011 is when it was my breaking point, and my breaking point was when I learned that my children were sleeping with knives under their pillow. That was my breaking point because I knew either they were protecting themselves or they were planning on doing something, and so that was the breaking point for me. And I had a support system. I opened up. Actually, I had no choice but to open up because my friend who became he's my ex-husband now, but he was my friend. He was on the phone with me one day and he asked me probing questions and I was able to share with him. And then as I was talking to him, my youngest son's dad started verbally abusing me. And so he witnessed it and he said, you need to leave. Like, you need to get out of that situation. And so I said, oh, I am, I was coming up with all kind of stuff. And so he kept on and kept on and kept on. And I said, well, how am I going to leave? I'm so used to him being here helping. I'm going to be lost with the kids. I was coming up with stuff. And he said, I'll help you. And he did just that. And he was able to move me and the kids into a townhouse. And it just went forward from there. I never looked back. But that definitely was the breaking point for me.
Well, that must have been something to see knives under the children's. How old were they at that time, approximately?
My oldest, which is now 28, so you figure this is 2011, this is 2000, so 9 years ago. So he was about 19. My next they were like from age 13 until about maybe 8 or 9.
Okay. Yeah, understand. And obviously, because 19 as a male, you're thinking protect mommy. Mommy needs to be protected. So I can see why they took a position. So while you were going through the transition, obviously moving up from there, how did it impact the children? How were they? What were their state of mind at the time?
My oldest son was he was already getting ready to go on his own. He actually left to go off with my dad to college. The other four, the youngest one used to have regret because he felt because he was abusive to my children, and so the youngest never got abused because that was his dad, and so I guess he figured that wasn't my child, so I'm not going to abuse him. So the other four, coming as we got out of the situation, I can see they were excited, they were happy, of course, because we no longer had to deal with that type of abuse. I became a military spouse. So they were able to experience the military life. We traveled a lot. We did a lot of stuff as a family. And so things were different for us, so they were able to experience a different lifestyle.
Okay.
Wow. Wow. So let me just say that this story is so mind blowing. But as you speak, and I'm sure for our viewers, we are learning things. It's becoming apparent to us. It's very cyclical. When you said it, did you say, and I want to know if I heard correctly, is that your oldest child started being verbally abusive?
My oldest, no, he went off to college. He left and went off to
Okay.
college.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, he went
Okay.
to Maine. He went to Maine and went off to college.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. So you said that your friend helped you relocate and so on. Um, and we're gonna get to where you can share ideas with solutions and how to move on from there. But I really want to delve in a little more on your experience. What was your state of mind like at that time while all of this was going on, trying to navigate being a mom, navigate going to work, and all of these different faces that you have to put up because you have to put up the face that you're okay, and then but you have this to deal with. You have to let the children know you're okay. All of these different faces you would have had. How did you navigate all of that during this time?
I mean, I would say going through all of that, like taking myself back. Hold on one second. Taking myself back.
Mhm.
Um, I was. Hold on a second. I gotta get myself situated. Hold on one second.
All right. As you start out your mic and camera and stuff like that, please go ahead and share the live with your friends and so on. There are a lot of people who go through this experience not knowing what to do or who to turn to. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I would say through all of that, I was like mixed feelings because I was in school and I was working.
Mhm.
I had to come home, I had to cook, I had to help with homework. He was there, but he wasn't doing anything. So I was, I experienced frustration, hurt, confusion. Um, I was feeling like I was still, the only time I was happy was when I went to work. Like being at work was my safe haven. When I went to work, I worked so much. I would take people's shifts on and everything because I didn't want to be home. The only reason why I wanted to be home is because of the kids. But other than that, I stayed at work. So, but I was all over the place. It was a mixture of everything going on. I even tried to start a business in the midst of it, and it was going good for a while, but he would go and take the money from that. And so that caused me to stop. I eventually closed the business down because he was taking all of the money. So, but I had a mixture of everything, all kind of feelings, dislike, hurt, angry, um, determined. I was just scared. I was all over the place at that time.
Did you blame yourself during this time?
Somewhat. Mhm. Somewhat. Yes. Yes.
What would some of those thoughts be?
Um, like why did I allow myself to get in this situation?
Mhm.
Um, how could I have gotten in this situation? Why did I get in this situation?
Mhm.
Um, I would even think about, oftentimes I would think about leaving, but then he would come back and he would pacify it and apologize and, sugarcoat and all these wonderful things. I changed. I'm not going to do it anymore. Let's go to church. All of these wonderful things. And it would be okay for a week or two. And then it was back to the same thing again. But I just don't think I had enough strength to leave because, like I said, where was I leaving to? I didn't have a good relationship with my mom. My dad wasn't there. A lot of my friends I didn't tell. I was embarrassed to tell. I didn't want to tell them that. Too afraid that I was going to lose friendships and everything. So what was I? That's how I was thinking. Like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How am I going to leave? I have no money. When I'm working, he's taking the money. So I felt I was in the box, literally. At least that's what I felt like. I was in the box.
Wow. It, you are just a really tenacious woman. Let me just say that, because even though you had all these mixed feelings, your determination, I mean, you're starting a business, you're working with the kids, homework, coming home, taking care of the household in the midst of an abusive relationship. Let me just tell you that you're a phenomenal, phenomenal woman. And I want to ask you, in the midst of all of this frustration, did you ever spiral so deep into depression that you wanted to commit suicide?
No, never. I've never had that feeling. But, you know, at some point, I had to start reaching out to God at some point because I was clueless. I didn't understand why. But my mom was still a praying mom. Even though we didn't have the perfect relationship, she would always pray for me and even at times pray with me. Um, you know, she had dreams of him drowning me in different things. And, you know, talking to my mom and her constantly telling me, you got to pray, I began really seeking God, and just really asking God to give me the strength. And I feel like that's another reason why I you know, just have okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna, I'm gonna let this support system help me to get out the situation. And I have to say it was nobody but God, because had I not met him or had I not been given the strength, I probably wouldn't even be here today, because he did try to take my life. So I probably wouldn't even be here to share the story today. So, and I tell people, at some point you have to seek God. You have to go to God and pray. You have to ask for clarification. Even through my healing process, just learning that I went through what I went through, not for me, but so that I can help other people to heal, survive, and overcome, is very important. But praying to God and asking God for that clarification, it helped me a whole lot to understand my why.
Yes.
Because when you don't have clarification, you'll think that, like, why am I going through this? I can't believe I'm going through this. God don't understand. God, but when you go to God and ask him and really, really humble yourself and ask him, please show me why. What is my why? And God gives you that clarification, you feel so much at peace.
So Sadia, you're because you're encouraging me here based on what you're saying, even though you were going through all of that. Because what I'm hearing from you is you didn't, even though it was painful, you brought yourself to a place where you were seeking solutions and answers, versus complaining about what had happened to you or what you were going through, but more about finding solutions. How
Yeah.
in the world were you able to do such? Please share that with us. How were you
I
able
just
to?
you know what? To be honest, I think it's just constantly hearing my mom, like constantly, because she stayed, like, regardless of what, my mom was forever in my ear about praying, forever in my ear helping me. Listen, you got baptized, you're anointed, you really need to pray. You can pray. Like, she kept on and kept on through it all.
Mm,
My mother constantly stayed in my ear. And I believe that in itself is what helped me to say, oh, I really need to seek God. And like I said, because I could have broke down, I could have turned drugs, I could have turned to alcohol, I could have turned to prostitution, anything. But it was God that kept me. Through it all, it was nobody but God that kept me. And so,
Wow.
even with the healing process, you know, It wasn't easy for me because when he apologized to me and my kids for all he had said and done, I didn't forgive him. It turned my stomach to even hear his name. Nevertheless, hear his voice. And I kept on and I kept on. And my mom said, you got to forgive him. You got to forgive him. And I said, how can I forgive somebody who's done such awful things to me and my children? And she said, it's not about him. It's about you. You have to forgive, not for him, but for you. And I kept on and I kept on praying and I kept on praying. And God literally, that's the message that I got. How can you expect me to forgive you if you don't forgive? And that's when I said, you know what? I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And I have made mistakes and have said or done things in life that wasn't pleasing to God, and he still forgave me. So if he can forgive me for all the things I said and done, who am I not to forgive? So I had to forgive him. For me, not for him. I was then able to talk to him on the phone. It doesn't turn my stomach to hear his name, but it was a process. It was definitely a process. It's something that I was not willing to do at first. But it's all a part of the healing process. And that's when you say you're an overcomer, that's the part of it, is that you're able to forgive your abuser for all they said or done to you. And that you're free. You can share your story. You don't have to, you don't have to have shame, guilt, or any of that stuff. You can just openly and freely share your story. That's when you become an overcomer. Until then, you're considered a survivor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, I'm completely blown away how the Lord has kept you and how the Lord has, because of your relationship with the Lord, you were able to forgive. And I call that overcoming, because you are stepping to another level. Because it could not have been easy to be abused with that at that measure, and then still be able to say, I forgive you. I no longer carry this anger. And that must have take a lot from you. And I totally applaud you for that, being able to do that, and allowing the Lord to work on you in such a way that your healing came about as you forgave him. And one of the things that I like about you is that you seem to be so intentional about getting healed. Like you didn't spiral into, I'm sorry for myself, let me go and do this and let me go and do that. You're intentional with your healing, about your healing, and your conclusion was, God bless your mom, your conclusion was, let me seek God and see what he's going to say to me so that I can get my healing. That's absolutely amazing. So why did your mom whispering those necessary things in your ear, did you think that helped you a lot, having that person there with that relationship with the Lord, that they were able to give you what you needed at the time when it came to reaching out to the Lord?
It definitely did. At first, when my mother used to tell me that, it kind of went through one ear and out the other. Because listening to him, I felt like my mom didn't want me, quote unquote, happy. So when she would tell me these things, I had this guard up. Like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not, you're just telling me things because you don't want me happy. And that was my attitude. But as time went on, my mother kept on and she kept on. And she'll tell me till this day, you had a praying mother. And I know I had a praying mother, because through it all, my mother prayed, and it had to be listen, it was nobody but God, and God was working through my mom, and we didn't even have a perfect relationship. But one thing I can say, my mother didn't want me going through, because she felt my pain because she went through. She felt my pain, and no mother wants their child experiencing what they experienced, So she tried saving me, but the time that she was trying to save me, I didn't want to be saved because I thought that she didn't have my best interest.
Right.
But I thank
Yeah.
God. I thank God that I didn't continuously shut my mother out. And eventually I started taking heed to what my mother was saying in my ear. And I took it upon myself to do exactly what she said, and that was to start praying. And that's exactly what I did.
Wow. I love what you're saying. And if I can say, when you and your mom didn't have, as you said, the best of relationship, your abuser's voice was your dominant voice. That he was your protector, provider, and then the dominant voices started shifting. So it became your mom, and then you found God, who obviously is now your everything. And I love that. I love the fact that you talk about intentionality. A lot of us go through things, and not even on the scale that you have been through, and we make excuses. Can you share with us why you chose not to make excuses? Why the intentionality behind getting up and saying, no, Satya, I am going to heal. I know it's going to be a process, but why the intentionality?
Because I know when you make up excuses, you never get it done, and if I'm going through this situation, I have my children that I have to, that are looking at me, and then I have other people, family and friends that really did love me, and so, or really do love me, and so, when there's no such thing as giving up. Um, why should I give up? Why would I give up? If I give up, then how are my kids going to look at me? And what's going to happen with my kids? What's going to happen with my loved ones? They don't want me to give up. My kids need me, and if nobody else didn't need me, my children needed me. And so I began to stop being selfish, because when you start thinking, in my opinion, when you start to where you want to give up, you're being selfish. And especially if you're a mother, you're not thinking about them, you're thinking about yourself, and being a mother, we're nurturers. And so we can't, there's no such thing as us, it's our children. And so how can I give up? Giving up is not, even today, is not in my vocabulary. Not at all.
Right.
Where would that lead us if we gave up?
Right.
Where would that lead us if we gave up? And I know God doesn't want us to give up. We go through different things in life as a test. And when we give up, then that means we didn't have faith in God. We didn't have, we kind of, how could I put it? We didn't have faith in God. We kind of just, how could I put it? Everything we go through is a test. We have to. Those are trials and tribulations, And when you become to that understanding and know that these are the things that's going to happen in life, I think it becomes a bit more. How could I say it? It becomes a bit more not accepting, but yeah, you learn to accept it, So I just thank God. I just thank God. Even through my situation, I thank God, because had I not gone through what I went through, and had I gave up, I wouldn't be able to help all these other individuals out here that need to heal, survive, and overcome. So what I went through is not for me. It's for them. So I thank God. That's my reason. That's another reason why I didn't give up. Because, I got to think about, even like with my magazine, I'm getting on that, there's a couple of times I felt like throwing in the towel, like, oh my gosh, this is just too much. But when I think about my why, and I know why I launched my magazine, it keeps me going, because it's not about me. It's about all the other individuals in the world that need this platform to share their story, so that we can all join forces to help individuals to heal, survive, and overcome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How important, I want to just zero in on that for a minute, because we would have mentioned forgiving. what you went through wasn't a walk in the park. It wasn't where somebody passed and knocked you, or somebody told you a negative word, or you're a fool. It wasn't something as simple as that. This is nights of abuse, days of abuse, losing your
Yes.
hard-earned money, um,
Mhm.
being put down. Then the ones that you love, your children, were being attacked as well. How
Mhm.
how were you able to, or rather, let me do it this way. How now would you say to someone the importance of forgiving in your healing process? How important is this forgiving for those who would have hurt you?
It it's not very, it's extremely important, because until you actually forgive, you're always going to hold some kind of is always going to be some kind of animosity there, some kind of dislike there. And to
Mm,
me, that's poison. You can't fully walk into your God-given purpose, right, until you forgive.
Mhm.
Because if you don't, it's gonna constantly beat on you,
mhm,
constantly, because you if you haven't forgave, you're carrying all that animosity, all of that hate, dislike, or anger, or whatever you have going on. How can you go out and help somebody else when you're still carrying all of this inside of you?
mm.
So,
Mhm.
in order to walk in your God-given purpose, you have to forgive.
Go ahead.
It's just as simple and easy. It's not simple and easy, but you have to forgive in
Mhm,
order to walk in your God-given purpose.
mhm.
You
What, what,
can't. Go
what, what,
ahead.
what are some of the things that you did to ensure that you had forgiven him? Because I know sometimes people say, "Oh, forgive, but I can't forget." How were you able to measure that you had come to a place where you had forgive him?
When, like I was saying before, when he asked for forgiveness, and I didn't forgive him,
Mhm,
I felt anger. I was still angry. I was bitter. To hear his
Mhm.
name or to even hear his voice, it turned my stomach.
mhm,
Um, but once I was able to forgive him, I was able to hold on the conversation. It didn't bother me to hear his voice. I was able to pray for him, to pray that he sought God himself, to pray for his
Mhm.
healing. I even prayed for his marriage. Um, and hold on a second. This thing doesn't want to
right?
hold.
As Cynthia Fixer.
Um,
Okay.
I even I even prayed for him to have a healthy marriage.
Mm,
And although God sent him a good wife, a very good wife, and he was doing well for a while, but things didn't work out with them because he emotionally and verbally abused her. But I say all that to say, when you get to a point that you can even pray for them, pray for their happiness, pray for
mm,
their well-being, and you don't have no kind of bitter, no animosity, no anger, no hate, no none of that,
mm.
that's when you're free.
Okay.
It's I can truly say, when I was at that point where I was angry and upset and all of this stuff, I couldn't even think clearly. It
Mm,
was like poison was still in my body. I
mm.
couldn't think. I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't get things done like I wanted it to get done, because I held all of this anger inside of me.
Right.
But
Mhm.
once
Yeah.
I became free, oh my God, it's such a different feeling. And
Mm,
now I can walk in my God-given purpose.
mm,
Hmm.
Wow. Wow. I love this. I love what I'm hearing. And the fact that you have shifted your mental processing system from being a survivor to being an overcomer, because a lot of times persons that have been through abuse or similar or traumatic situations, they survive and they really never live after. And to hear you saying that you're living and not just surviving, but you're thriving, you're overcoming, you're creating opportunities for other women to come out and speak. It really speaks to me that in the midst of pain, there is purpose, or it gets you to purpose in a greater dimension. Um, what would you advise young women? Because you would have met him, you said, when you were 16 years of age. What would be your advice to young women, especially in that age group that may have grown up in abusive homes, or they're in abusive relationships? What would you say to them at 16 years?
I mean, even at 16, just thinking about when I was that young, um, to making becoming familiarized with what, first of all, what domestic violence is, and then becoming
Mhm,
aware of the signs. And to
mhm,
know that the name calling is not cute. That's not okay.
mhm,
That's a form of domestic violence. Um,
mhm,
the mental abuse, putting you down, controlling you, telling you where you can go and where you can't go, and when you have to be back, and all this kind of stuff. That's control. Those are
mhm,
the beginning stages of domestic violence before it gets physical. So
mhm,
if somebody would have told me back then, I mean, I know, I seen it at the age of 8 with, experienced it with my mom. But if I had somebody to actually tell me, if I was able to get educated at that age on what domestic violence is or was and the signs, I don't think I don't know, but maybe I probably wouldn't have made that decision. So I tell anybody from young, middle age, older, learn what domestic violence is and the signs, and know that it does not start off as physical. It starts off with emotional, verbal, mental, and that control.
mhm.
Get out of it
Wow.
before you get, when you start seeing a person, becoming aggressive and all of this kind of stuff, and name calling you, it's time to go. It's time to go.
Yeah.
Don't even wait and, oh, this cute, he just loves you. That's not love. That's not
Mhm.
love. Because if a person truly loves you, they're going to respect you. They're going to want the
Yeah.
best for you. They're not going to hurt you. That's not love. So, young ladies, it's not love. Okay? Know the signs early. And when you see it, no, that's not for you. And you need to keep going. Furthermore, focus on your education. Focus on your education. Leave the young boys and whatever. The time will come for that, but focus on your education. That's more important than anything else.
You said something, Satya, that is so important, and I just want to reiterate it for other parents and adults listening. They need to have these types of conversation. I find that as a young woman growing up, we would hear all about the dreams of this fancy wedding and what it means to become a wife, and all, but we don't have these realistic conversations of the real world outside there and what happens if you find yourself in a situation. We don't talk about domestic violence, we don't talk about depression and suicide, we don't talk about rape and how we handle these things. So when it does come up, as you rightfully said, you're not aware of it until it gets to the point where you're already so far into it, and now there is a struggle to come out, to stay in its mental and emotional turmoil. So I would just like to reiterate that point for our listeners, even for myself. Let's learn to have these conversations. My question to you, Satya, is how important is the role of the church in aiding domestic violence? I mean, we're aiding overcomers, survivors, victims of domestic abuse.
That actually grows up in the church. So if they're growing up in the church, I feel like, even pastors, anybody that's into, when you have a Sunday school, it needs to be some lessons, okay, and even in church that talk about domestic violence, helping people to become aware of what it is and to know those
Mhm.
signs. As a pastor, I just feel like from coming from the Word of God, maybe start preaching on scriptures that have something to do with um, the physical, the physical part of it, the physical abuse, the mental, the verbal, emotional, just reflecting on some Bible verses that you can kind of relate, so that you can be able to teach people when you're teaching the Word of God on Sunday or doing Sunday schools or even Bible study, so that people are made more aware. Because honestly, when people think about domestic violence, what's the first thing they think? Physical. That's not even the first sign of domestic violence. It's not. The first sign of domestic violence is the verbal, emotional, and mental. The control. Control. So, in my opinion, I feel like if people were made more aware of first what it is, and secondly those early signs, then we would have less situations where people are getting physically abused and then their lives are being taken. We don't need to just focus during October. Domestic violence happens 365 days a year. Yes, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but it doesn't stop in October. We need to continue. This needs to be an ongoing thing. We need to start incorporating this stuff in schools, in the churches, like I said. They need to have information, the doctor's office, everywhere. Everywhere needs to have, people need to know about what domestic violence is. Society in a whole needs to stop making people think that it starts off physical. We all know when you hear domestic violence, what's the first thing they say? Somebody got killed or something physical. You never talk about the emotional. You never talk about the mental. You never talk about the verbal. You never talk about how these individuals were controlled. So now they're in these situations and they're thinking it's okay, or he just loves me, or he just wants the best, and it's not even that. And then next thing you know, now you're going through the physical stuff. And then as soon as the woman finally realizes, and you got men that go through it too, but as soon as you realize, oh my gosh, I can't deal with this. This is too much. I want to go. The first thing we do is, oh, I'm going to leave you. Because we think by telling the abuser we're going to leave that they're going to straighten up. But no, they don't straighten up. That then makes them think, well, you know what? She's going to leave me. I don't want her to leave, so I'm just going to take her life and I'm going to take mine too, or I'm just going to take her life. Because if I can't have her, nobody can have her. And that's why it's important that if you're trying to get out of a domestic violence situation, you need to use a safety plan. You don't need to go tell your abuser because you think he's going to change that you're going to leave, because that's not going to happen. You need to get a hold. In my magazine, I have a safety plan that's permanently in the magazine. But grab a hold of a safety plan, utilize that safety plan, and get in touch with somebody that you know you can trust, whether it's my organization, whether it's another organization, a friend, family, a pastor, a church member, somebody that you know is not going to judge you and that's going to help you get out of that situation safely. There's always the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They have resources as well. They're national. So if someone was to call there and needed a safe haven or something, they can call anonymously or not anonymously and let them know what the situation is, and they'll get them the resources that they need.
Okay, before we get ready to wrap up in just like 2 minutes or so, as you were speaking and so on, this has driven you to a place where you can share your experience with young women coming up and paying attention to those signs. One of the things I realize in our society today, it is acceptable for people to call each other's names, and I hear younger girls, younger women, allowing males to call them names, and they're in relationships. And one of the things I just want to point out, one of the things that you said, it doesn't start physical, it starts verbally. So you hear things, you're no use, and all these different things. I'm just paraphrasing and collecting some information from that what you said earlier. These are things that you need to look out for and pay attention to, and not say that it is okay, because it would lead to greater, which is when it becomes physical and so on. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. So if there's somebody out there listening, like I said earlier, please share the live. It's going to be on It's on YouTube as well, going live also. So you can go on there, you can check it out. The Elements of Judah Tribe page. It's also going to be on Radio 365 in Grenada online, so you can also check out that as well. But sadly, I just wanted to share for 30 seconds, sorry, 30 seconds on to a young woman, name calling, you're getting name call, and all of these things. What would you say to this young lady?
Young ladies, we have to learn how to love ourselves. And when we learn how to love ourselves, then we'll know what we should and shouldn't be accepting from anybody. Name calling is not okay, and it is a form of abuse. Even if it's from a friend, and you don't have an intimate relationship, it is a form of abuse, and it's unacceptable. Take time out to learn who you are, even at a young age. You can learn who you are, and just really learn how to love yourself. Because when you love yourself, I don't feel like you would be willing to accept certain things. And most importantly, I put God first in all that you do, even at a young age. Put God first in all that you do.
All right.
Wow.
Sophie, you want to any quick 30 seconds?
Sure. Satya, I just want to say that you are a fantastic woman, exemplary woman. I mean, for all that you've been through and where you are now, you personify being an overcomer. And I am so proud that I am a woman and I can look up to you and see your growth, your evolution, your entire process. And for all those listening on to this session this evening, make it our duty to help other people see themselves, spread the word about what domestic violence is, what to look for. I think that's one of my big takeaways. Have the difficult conversations. Back to you, Pastor Brian.
All right. So thank you very much, Sasha, for being here with us. And when I was just going, my thoughts were going through my head, and I was hearing in my spirit, what was designed to kill you has now held you. What was designed to kill you has now propelled you into becoming all that you will be. And you're going to go national because you're going to go global. Because your heart is in the right place. God is going to cause you to expand, and many women are going to call. Many women are going to connect with you because of the grace of God that is on you, the grace to forgive, and because your mantra was to forgive, the Spirit of the Lord will grant grace on you, great grace over your life and over all that concerns you. And as a result, your children are going to be called blessed because of the grace that is on you. Praise the Lord. So and I pray that you remember this as you walk this walk of encouraging others, because I know that you have your magazine going, you have the workshops going, you have talk shows going, you are making persons aware. And I encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, and because in some cases men are abused too, to go on Satya's page. You'll see there's lots of information that she's always putting up, and you can get help there. And let us say something. Let us not keep this to ourselves. Let us say something about it, and so that you could be saving somebody's life. You never know. So we want to thank you this evening for coming on. I know that you are busy and you have a lot going on. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you for taking the time out and being with Pastor Sophie and myself. And it was a great pleasure to have you. And I hope that you can come again, because I know we didn't go into practical stuff that you do and that you can do and so on to overcome. But I believe that your story has encouraged others today. And those of you who are on with us, please go ahead and share this with women who you know have been going through the same thing. Help a sister today. Help a brother. Help somebody today. Don't let them lose their life just like that. Help them out today. You might be the person who can make a difference in somebody's life. Just as how Satya's mom was that voice in her ears to go to God, you could be that voice in that person's ear. So we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being on Living Life God's Way. The program is going to remain on Facebook. It's also on YouTube. You can go on and have a look at it. Forward the link to your friend. Forward the link to someone you know you can benefit. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye.
Hello. How can we be successful? By living life God's way. Join me, Pastor Brian Callender, and a special guest each week as we discuss aspects of life and share nuggets with you so that you can be the best person God designed you to be. Join us every Thursday at 6 p.m. on social media as we share and challenge you to be the best that God will have you to be. Grab a friend, sit down and watch and actively participate of what God will do as we share. God bless you.